Welcome to Drinking from the Fire Hose. I'm Roger Wilcox and I'm co-hosting this series with Murray McMillan, who you'll see shortly. This video is aimed at equipping managers to improve their team's performance. The focus of the video is visibly driving performance using huddles and war rooms. We're going to give you some very practical tips to make your team's performance more visible. And at the end of the video, we'll leave you with an activation, enabling you to immediately put into practice what you've heard. So what's the goal? The goal is for leaders to regularly align everyone in their team around what needs to be done to hit the team's goals and to achieve the team vision. And to do this in a visual and engaging way using huddles and war rooms. Why? Well, firstly, great performing teams know where they're heading, they know what each individual's doing, and they know how to support each other. So it's like watching a professional American football game. I love watching that. And what you can really see is that the people have practiced, they've spent time together, they know each other's strengths and weaknesses, they've got a shared vision, they've got a goal about what they're trying to do. And when the moves take place, they know what everybody's going to do. If somebody's not doing what they're meant to do, has been taken out by somebody, then they've got other players can step in and take the place. Everybody knows what needs to be done to advance that ball, or conversely, to defend the situation. We want teams and team leaders to have that same level of engagement and collaboration that are taken for granted in professional sports teams. So why else is it important to regularly align everyone in a visually engaging way? Well, leaders, if you regularly align everyone in your team, then you're much more likely to achieve the results you want. People deliver great results when they get regular feedback on how they're doing. So huddles and war rooms, that enables you to get very frequent feedback. You can see your performance, you can see on a regular basis how you're doing against your targets. So you get that instantaneous feedback. It enables the performance loop to improve. Making performance visible enables quick course corrections to be made. So what I've seen in the past is that teams have set themselves a very clear target on where they're trying to get to. They start moving things forward, but perhaps the performance isn't as good as it should be. So if there's a graph, they're not quite meeting where they should get to. So at that point, it's great. They can actually identify that and then identify, well, okay, how do we get back on track? How do we do things differently than we've done before? How do we make an inflection point so we can start improving our performance? So over to Murray at this point. Why else is it important to regularly align everybody? What else do you think, Murray?
I think some of that, Roger, is just it's very inspiring as well. If you're visibly driving this, if you've got these huddles working well, it's inspiring. People feel more empowered. They're probably more likely to contribute and contribute a bit more value to what you're doing and what you're driving forward. Also, I think it helps having, as you were describing there, having all the information on display. It's easy to go and almost pinpoint exactly what are we trying to do, where are we trying to go, and probably more importantly, where are we right now? It's a bit like your football analogy. It's nice to have that visibility, but what are we actually trying to do? Where are we? And what are the next few steps to get us there, to get to the goal line or the touch line? And I guess it's just, as again, keeping it visible, keeping everybody proactively involved, and having all the right information to hand. We'll talk about war rooms slightly later on, but for me, that's the value of that concept, is having all that information in one place. It becomes the go-to spot, the best place to have a conversation, because all the information you need, all the key stuff is there and visible and relevant. So I guess that maybe moves us on to the current performance. If it's something you're doing just now, how effective is it? How engaged are your team members in your huddles or in the war room concept? If it's not something you've done before, it's a good thing to kick off. And again, it's something we touched on in the 10-minute video. It's a constantly evolving concept. You're not going to get it right first time. So it's a good way just to keep improving it, keep moving it forward. Again, it's a good way of just double checking, is the information we're sharing consistent? I know for us, when we had the war rooms and various setups before, everything in there should be real and live and sort of consistent. If you're walking in there and you're having a conversation with somebody saying, no, that's not quite what we're doing just now, it's the wrong information. Everything there should be the correct, relevant information. And again, consistency, it's all the right stuff in the one place. Another key part of that is people can literally point to what the priorities are and what they're working to. Again, for me, nice thing about the war room, you're in there, you've got all the information up on the walls. It's a great place to have a meeting. Even if it's just a 5-minute meeting, you can walk in, you can go up to that panel, chat, here's the information we're dealing with. Or indeed, if you're having a video conference with offshore or another part of the organization, you can look around and everything you need to see and discuss is up on the walls. Moving away from war rooms just for a second, moving back into the huddles. Again, are they focused? Are they energizing? Are they achieving what you want to do? I'm a big fan of keeping these things fairly short and succinct. It doesn't have to be a massive session. And again, it doesn't have to be particularly formal. If an issue comes up, grab the team, go have a huddle, deal with that issue, and move on. And just before I hand back to Roger, I mean, I think some of that's keeping it informal. I mean, we've had the lucky situation in the past, even in Scotland, where we've had nice weather. We've taken the opportunity every now and again just to head outside. There's maybe an open seating area in the office complex. Head outside, maybe treat the guys to some ice cream. You know, stand there, have your chat, have your huddle, back in and get on with delivering it. So, you know, keep it interesting, keep it lively, keep it informal. Back over to you, Roger, for some more ideas.
Yeah, thanks. I think the key thing in terms of current performance is go and just have a look at how you are currently performing. Is it visual? Is it engaging? So what we're going to do now is move on to how to achieve our goals. What I'd say is focus on information, make it visible to the team. So what is a daily huddle? Or what is a huddle? A huddle is getting together on a regular basis, perhaps on a daily basis, perhaps on a weekly basis, perhaps both. And essentially what you're doing is getting together with your team and reviewing an information board. What I've done in the past for myself and what I've coached other people to do, other leaders to do, is actually work with your team to generate an information board. And what that looks like is identifying what are the key elements that's important to the team. I'd start with having a vision. We've talked about this in our previous videos, but make sure that your vision is very clear. And then built on that, what are your strategic goals? What are your strategic goals that your team are going to be focused in on? And then based on that, you can start building in what's important to the team. For example, key performance indicators. Which are they? Make sure that they're up on your information board and that they're clear. I like to have things like, what are the problems the team are encountering at the moment? Make that very visible. And that's something that we can then really get after and focus on eliminating problems. I also like to focus on priorities and having the top 5 priorities for the week. So it's, again, very visual to the team what they're going to focus on. And I also like to have something at the end which focuses on the team's well-being. I like to see something which is very visual, which is a curve, which then shows where people are positioned on the curve, whether they're down in the dumps, and you may see somebody with a down face, but that may be somebody who's overworked, they're overstretched at the moment, they're not feeling well for whatever reason. So it's good to know that. On the other spectrum, it's somebody with a smiley face who's feeling good, they can deliver everything they've got, they can even give support to other people. So that way it enables you to really focus on the team as well. And what I've seen that's been very effective is in teams where people don't always like to articulate what's going on with them in their home lives, but this gives an ability to do that in a way that enables people to start sharing what are they actually feeling. And the more as a team leader you can encourage that with your teams, you can start to get better performance out of the teams. So on how to, the daily huddle, as I said, is getting together with people on a daily basis and reviewing that information. What I like is that is to encourage people to make the information very visual. So what works best is pictures, charts, lots of colors. I've used a red button, where if the team have a problem, they put the red button on a magnetic board or something like that and put it up there, so it's very visible. This is a problem. Linking back to one of our other videos about go see and assesses, I've also got people to have another button which is they've written on it, go see assess. And so during the day in the conversation, we'll identify as a team, look, that's an area we really need to go see and assess. So we put it up there, and it gives a reminder to people to go and do that. It's the old adage that a picture is worth 1,000 words is very true with huddles. The more you can get them visual, the better it is. So over to Murray at this point for some other ideas on how to achieve the goal.
Yeah, just building on that, Roger. I think, as you said there, you want it to be visually stimulating. For me, you want to be able to walk into one of these areas and almost at a glance see all the key information. The last thing you want, just like looking at a bad PowerPoint slide where you've got reams and reams and reams of information, you really just want the key things that it draws your eye to it almost immediately. And as you said, it's using all the tricks of different colored magnets, different colored pens, smiley faces, sad faces, whatever it is that will draw you to the relevant information, and almost to get a glance, see, is it good or bad? How are we doing? How are we performing with it? Something I've seen worked very well in the past, and it comes back into the war room concepts a little bit, is having panels in the room, and it's somebody will own that panel. And that works very well. It helps us have two-way dialogue, because when we're having a discussion in there, if I own the panel, I'll be the one that's discussing it, and I'll be the one that's feeding back and answering the questions on there. So I think it gives a degree of ownership in that two-way conversation when you're having sessions in there, rather than just the leader or one person giving all the information out. It also gives, again, a degree of ownership for the information that's there. If it's my panel, it's up to me to keep it up to date. And these things change almost daily. So I need to go in there and change it and update it. And that's maybe a practical step as well, is you want some sort of setup that's easy to update. Yeah. It sounds obvious, but you don't want to print something out on A0 that you then have to change again tomorrow. So I'm a big fan of maybe a mix. You maybe need some printed stuff that's going to stay there for a little while, but dry wipe. And again, from a very practical way of doing these things, you can get some sticky stuff that goes on the wall now that actually doesn't damage the wall, but lets you write on it and wipe it off. So 6 months down the line, you decide you're not using that room anymore, you can take it off when you're back to a meeting room. So again, just keeping it very practical, easy to update, easy to share. For the panels, we had people's names. If it's Murray's board, Murray's name's up there, because you might know, the person for production is Murray. So it just reminds you, right, he's the guy to go to. And actually, in one of the platforms we used, we had people's photographs, because you might think, well, who's Murray? There's his photograph, right? I know he sits over there. I can go and see him. So again, just keep it practical, keep it easy, and actually to some degree keep it light as well. It ought to be a place you enjoy going into. You enjoy going there to catch all that valuable and relevant information. We ended up using these sort of rooms for more huddles, for more focused sessions, maybe videoing in with other parts of the organization. So for me, the go-to place. And I guess maybe just my final part, Roger, on the huddles, if you're doing that, whether it's in a war room or elsewhere, is keep it short, keep it active, keep it energizing. You and I have both discussed before about having stand-up meetings. I'm a big fan of that as well. That just subtly, I think, keeps the meeting short as well. If you've all got to stand up, do your presentation, maybe move around the room from panel to panel or area to area. It just helps keep it short and sharp. People aren't sitting, maybe starting to doze off or look at their phone. They're stood up, they're focused, deal with the issue, and move on.
Yeah, that's
Back
good.
to you, Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. Yeah, I like that. And a question I know we were talking about before, do you need a dedicated meeting room? And it's good if you can get a dedicated meeting room, especially for the war room, which is more focused on projects. So if you have a discrete project where you're trying to work, we've seen it in many industries, you've got something that needs to be accomplished in a certain amount of time. It's often good having a place where you can all come and congregate. You may even have more frequent get-togethers, whether it be in the morning and then at the end of the day, just to say, where have you got to? But it's something, as Murray said, you can actually bring people in and say, look, this is the real issue. This is what the problem is. And it's very visual. So a war room is great, very much project focused as well. Huddles work in meeting rooms as well. But I have also worked in places where we've held a huddle just in the corridor. So I know one time I was a young team leader, and what we did, I got together with my team, and they wanted to get together to review the performance. We set up a huddle, and it was literally in an open plan area. There are lots of the teams all sitting around. And what we did was there was a wall at the back, and we took off the picture that was up on the wall, and we put up a whiteboard, and we converted that into our information board. And it was great. We used to stand up, again, talking what you just said there, Murray, about standing up. We used to stand up every day. We had a meeting for about 10 to 15 minutes in the morning, and it was really good for us. We talked about what the priorities were. We actually came together as a team to talk about other stuff, but what are the priorities? What are we really going to focus in on? And we could definitely go and ask anybody in the team, and they knew what they were focused on. They knew what was important to deliver, and they also knew how it was important to the longer term. I think some of the things that I wanted to bring out as well, how I've used visual performance, which might be helpful to people watching. Sometimes if you've got difficulty achieving targets, then visual performance is a very good way of doing that as well. So one example I've got is performance appraisals. There's a business I was working in, and they were horrendous at hitting their target for getting all the performance appraisals done by mid-year, horrendous at getting everybody to complete the performance appraisals by end year. So we talked to them about that and said, well, how can you make that more visual to people? Rather than just having spreadsheets that you send out to everybody saying, look, you're behind, we set up a very simple methodology. Each team had a pie, and it was visual on the wall. And each team leader then had to mark up how are their team getting on about getting to 100%. And the target was that by mid-year, everybody had to get to 100%. So what we then said was, well, a week before you should be at 75%, 2 weeks before you should be at 50% completion, etc. And from 4 weeks before the target, team leaders started to work on the performance appraisals. They then marked up their actual pie chart to show them this is where we've got to. And it was amazing how that transformed the business. Suddenly the business came in and they were actually delivering all of their performance appraisals completed by the target date. It actually moved from there because what we started to do was focus on other areas, audits, go see assessors where they'd set targets, and they started to use the same methodology. It was so simple, but very, very visual. Murray, we also talked about having a two-way dialogue. Do you want to talk about that a bit more, about why that's important?
Yeah, I guess it comes back to, again, the sense of ownership. So you've got that two-way dialogue. You've got people that actually own the information and drive that forward. I think also very important when we've got things like top 5 priorities for the week, you've got people that can actually articulate that. They've got a degree of ownership for some of these priorities, and they can share that with the rest of the team, the rest of the organization. Actually, just building on one of the things you said earlier on about the sort of huddle areas, it's something I did when I did a team of engineers years ago. I actually did a team of process engineers. So we had a U-shaped area, and we had our priorities, our team priorities up on a board. And this, again, coming into the two-way conversation, it worked really well when another part of the organization would come wanting my guys to work on something for them. And we could actually stand there and go through, right, here's our current priorities. You're now asking me to do something different. Where does it fit in? So essentially, what has to drop off our list to satisfy, this request you've come in with? And quite often they'd forgotten some of the things that our guys were already working on, and they would be able to say, actually, do you know what? It can possibly sit for another few days while you deliver this one. Or, do you know what? We're going to have to negotiate with one of the other assets and see if ours is a slightly different priority. Yeah. So I think just being able to share that information, have that grown-up conversation around what is the business priority. Maybe it comes back to the vision and goals again. The priorities we've got on our board for our team, does that fit in with the vision and goals for the organization? But yeah, that two-way dialogue is essential, even just contributing members in your team as well, so they feel they've got a voice and they're contributing. Go back to your sports analogy, they've got that very definite part to play to drive you towards the overall goal.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. So I guess going on to what a leader should expect to see if they get this right, we've categorized it as what you'll see, what you'll hear, what you'll feel. What you'll see is your performance being very visible. You will see those information boards. You will see people gathered around the information, talking about it. You'll hear people contributing to the conversations. As Murray said, it's great if you can actually have a board, and this is actually going to be updated by Murray, or it's going to be updated by Roger, make that very visible. It gives everybody a voice. And certainly one of the key aspects of employee engagement is to give everybody a voice. So the more you can get that two-way dialogue in, the better. So you'll actually hear that dialogue. You'll actually hear problems and issues being surfaced and discussed. And for me, that's another key element of this information board. It's so important. There's many issues and many problems, and a lot of the time they don't get aired. And what we like to do is actually train people up in problem solving, very simple problem solving techniques as well. And we'll do another video on that just to give people an insight into what those problem solving techniques are. But once people actually start problem solving for themselves, it's amazing how that inspires and how performance results, how it's actually delivered. If you can imagine, at the moment, many people go to the team leader to fix the problems, and so the team leader becomes the bottleneck. Whereas actually with problem solving, the whole team becomes empowered to solve the problems together, and it's only getting the team leader involved, very intractable problems, or maybe getting their input where it comes. So it actually liberates the team. So actually having that visible on your board is an important aspect. Let me throw it back to Murray. Any other thoughts on observable behaviours?
Yeah, I think that's a key one actually, is that people would actually, you'll see people standing near these information boards or in your war room actually sharing that if they're having a conversation with another part of the organisation. I mean, again, it's some of the really simple stuff. We tended to make sure all the, especially the information that changes on a regular basis was up there. For example, you've got an outage planned for next Thursday. Chances are these things always move. But see, you can't assume everybody read the email that said it's now going to be Friday. But at least if that's up on the wall or up on one of the boards, as soon as you walk in there, you can see, oh, well, crikey, I didn't realize that had changed. So you've got that live relevant detail up there that's just, again, I think it just helps ensure everybody's sharing the same information. Maybe everybody wasn't at the meeting where that was changed. Maybe not everybody read the email, but it's really key because now we've just moved that date for a fairly key activity. So I think just, making sure everything is, it will almost naturally become the go-to place to have a conversation. So yeah, one of your observable behaviours, Roger, was you'll see people interacting with that information. It almost becomes the obvious place to go and have a conversation because all the information's in that one place and you trust it and it's fairly up to date. So yeah, you should see that. Again, you'll hear, as you say, people being able to discuss problems and contribute to problems. And even if it's on the spur of the moment, you can scribble up on the board. Here's an issue that's just come to us. Scribble up on the board and maybe it gets a more focused look tomorrow at the proper team huddle, but at least it's captured there. It's sat waiting for us. And it should, I guess, just for one of the things you hopefully feel that people are much more engaged in the business priorities and are driving those forward. The conversations, the meetings you're having, you should be able to sort of sense that is now people are more engaged and are driving towards the same shared goal. So back to you, Roger.
Thanks, Murray. Okay, so what we're going to do now is focus on activations. As we said at the start of the video, it'd be great for leaders to immediately leave here and go and apply something. So our activations are, firstly, go and check with all your team and ask them, what are your top 5 priorities that you're working on this week? And ask them, what are the team's top 5 priorities that should be worked this week? And it'll be interesting to see your response. Is everybody talking about the team priorities? Do they have a clear understanding, a shared understanding of what the top 5 priorities are for your team? If not, that's probably an indication that you need to do something different. Everybody should be focused and understand what the top 5 priorities are, even if theirs are slightly different, but they should understand how theirs align. So go and check that with your team members. The second activation, I'd say, is go and review your information board. Have a cold eyes look at it, do a go see and assess on it. And is it consistent with your vision and strategic goals? And is it really clear? Is it simple? Is it very visual? So those are the 2 activations we've got for you. So back over to Murray.
Okay, before I go over to the call to action, Roger, just one tad into the activation. We're both big fans of the top 5. It's one of these things that sounds so simple, but I think certainly from my point of view, where we've got to top 5 over the year, I've been with way too many teams who have 20 priorities or more. And the chances are you come back in a week's time to review it and you've still got 20. They've not actually moved on. 5 is a real manageable number, especially in a week. 5 priorities, hopefully with somebody that owns it, that is responsible for it, accountable for it. And if you get that done in the week, then you can come up with another one. But 5 just feels like a really manageable number. So like you say, if the team can't all articulate the same 5 priorities, maybe we're heading in different directions. So it's a bit of a warning sign. Final call to action for me, and it's the same one we use all the time, is go do it. Go try it. Go try your huddles. Go do your set up a war room. And again, in this virtual world that a lot of us are working in just now, there's the challenge. How would you have a war room virtually? How would you share that with your team? It's still fairly easy to do, but it's an opportunity to be creative. Final point on, I guess, Roger, just before I hand back to you for any final calls to action, is especially with things like information boards and visualization and war rooms, there's many ways to do it. You and I have been lucky enough over the years to work with a lot of organizations, and we've created these for a lot of organizations. So we have a lot of examples. So if you're struggling to get your head around what sort of information should we have up there, how would we set it up, get in touch. We're more than happy to show you some examples of what we've done in the past. So I guess over to you, Roger, for the final part.
Yeah, thanks very much, Murray. Yeah, that's it. So as Murray said there, we're very happy to help. I think the key thing for me is for leaders really to regularly align your team around what needs to be done to hit these targets, to hit the vision, to do it visually in an engaging way is so important. So do reach out if you need any support.